Coming up on our newscast tonight. North Korea's Samjian art troupe and other artists arrive in South Korea's Mukho port. The 140-member performing group is set to dazzle spectators with special performances commemorating the PyeongChang Winter Olympics. President Moon Jaein holds a summit meeting with his counterpart from Estonia, marking the first visit by a head of a state from Estonia since the establishment of diplomatic ties 27 years ago. Two leaders touch on various topics, including cyber defense and supporting structures. Exports have been set to continue to be the South Korean economy's key growth engine. The nation ranks 13th in global outbound shipment competitiveness. NEWSCENTER begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea. Time for Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Chua. More arrivals from up north for joint celebrations of the upcoming Winter Games. A cultural group traveled to South Korea via ferry to put up two highly anticipated performances, one in the sub-host city of Gangneung and the other in the capital, Seoul. Ji Myung-gil has our top story.
The North Korean ferry with the red letters Mangyongbong 92 arrived Tuesday in South Korea at Mukho port in the city of Donghae on the east coast, carrying the North Samjian art troupe. The Mangyongbong is a 9,700-ton cargo passenger ferry named after a hill in Pyongyang near the birthplace of North Korea's late founder Kim Il-sung. Seoul has temporarily lifted its ban on North Korean ships entering its waters to allow the ship to come. The Mangyongbong 92 itself is not one of the North Korean vessels blacklisted by the United Nations or the U.S. on suspicion of involvement in Pyongyang's nuclear weapons program. The North Korean troupe will be using the ship as lodging during the concert period in Gangneung and is also a way for the North to keep the artists from having contact with South Koreans. The North Korean artists will perform on Thursday in the city of Gangneung on the eve of the Winter Olympics. Gangneung is hosting Olympic events, including women's ice hockey, in which the two Koreas will compete as a joint team, a first in Olympic history. The troupe will perform again on Sunday at the National Theatre of Korea in Seoul. More North Koreans will be arriving in the south Wednesday morning via the Western Land Route. The 280-member delegation consists of 4 officials from the North National Olympic Committee, 229 cheerleaders, 26 taekwondo demonstrators, and 21 journalists. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
And to allow the performers to cross over via sea, Seoul decided to apply exception to its unilateral sanctions banning North Korean ships from entering the country. The government may go a step further, providing food, oil, and electricity to the ferry and its people if need be. Oh Jung-hee helps us examine if such leeway would go against the international measures targeting the regime.
The South Korean government says it might provide some essential support like food, fuel, and electricity to the North Korean ferry while it's docked at Mukho. Speaking to reporters on Tuesday, a unification ministry official said Seoul will follow the precedent of what it did during the 2002 Asian Games in Busan. That's when the same ferry, Mangyongbong 92, made its way to South Korea with cheerleaders on board. Experts say this will not violate international sanctions as long as the food isn't from America and the fuel is reported beforehand to the UN Security Council.
The UN sanctions resolution bans the provision of fuel, but we know that this is for the convenience of the artists and others on board the ferry, so it would be hard to call this a violation.
There has already been controversy over whether the Mangyongbong 92's entry into the South Korean port violates Seoul's own unilateral sanctions, the May 24th measure. Adopted in 2010 after a North Korean submarine torpedoed and sank the South Korean warship Cheonan, the measure banned North Korean ships from entering South Korean waters. Seoul decided to make an exception for the Mangyongbong 92, implying that it does not plan on lifting the sanctions. But experts think Pyongyang did have a reason to some extent for choosing a ferry this time.
Maybe North Korean government wants to see how South Korean government would respond if they change the method of transportation to the Mangyongbongo, because now they believe that South Korean government would not oppose even if North Korea changed their method of transportation, because they know that South Korean government wanted to continue the dialogue with North Korea.
South Korea's Unification Ministry explained that North Korea has not asked for material support and that nothing has been decided. It added that Seoul will closely cooperate with the international community to prevent any friction over perceived sanction violations. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, President Moon Jaein has a series of bilateral summits with visiting global leaders lined up. First of many more to come, a meeting with his Estonian counterpart. Hwang Ho-jun zooms in on the liberal leader's Olympic diplomacy.
President Moon Jae-in held a summit meeting with his Estonian counterpart, President Kersti Kaljulaide, on Tuesday. The two leaders agreed to improve bilateral cooperation in various areas, including cyber defense and fostering of startup businesses. President Kaljulaide is the first head of state arriving in South Korea for the PyeongChang Winter Olympics. In fact, she is the first Estonian leader ever to visit South Korea since the two countries established diplomatic ties 27 years ago. President Moon said President Kaljulaide's first ever visit to Korea will be a great milestone in their bilateral relationship.
올해는 에스토니아가 독립 100주년을 맞는 아주 경사스러운 해이고, 또 우리 한국은 평창 올림픽을 또 개최하는 아주 경사스러운 해입니다. 이렇게 두 나라 모두에게 아주 경사스러운 이 해에 대통령께서 이렇게 방한해 주신 것이 아주 각별한 의미가 있다고 생각이 됩니다.
President Moon noted Estonia is a global leader in the IT industry for introducing the world's first electronic residency identification card system and electronic voting system. He said he hopes South Korea and Estonia, as powerhouses in the IT sector, will boost bilateral cooperation in various areas, including e-government, cyber defense, and fostering startup businesses. The Korean leader also thanked his Estonian counterpart for supporting Seoul's policy on North Korea.
President Moon asked for Estonia's continued support on the momentum of improvement of inter-Korean relations created by PyeongChang.
President Kaljulaide in return expressed her gratitude for President Moon's warm welcome and said she also hopes the two countries will be able to increase exchanges in both government and private levels. The Estonian president is set to return home on Monday after attending the opening ceremony of the 2018 PyeongChang Winter Olympics on Friday. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
American Vice President Mike Pence will head the U.S. delegation for the opening ceremony of the Winter Olympics. Regardless of the peaceful tone set by North Korea, he reminded the world Washington will keep up pressure on Pyongyang. At the same time, he does not rule out the possibility of meeting with the regime officials. Kwon Jang-ho reads into the VP's message.
U.S. Vice President Mike Pence has left the door open for a possible meeting with North Korean officials during his visit to South Korea this week. Speaking to the press on a stop at an Alaskan military base before he heads to Asia, he said he'll see what happens, but stressed that there has been no change to the U.S. stance on North Korea.
But my message, whatever the setting, whoever's president, will be the same. And that is that North Korea must, once and for all, abandon its nuclear weapons program and ballistic missile ambitions.
This comes after the White House stressed that his role in PyeongChang will not just be ceremonial. Despite South Korea reaching out to the North to take part in the Games, White House officials have said that the Vice President will make sure the regime does not hijack the sporting event for its own propaganda purposes, and that he will take every chance to highlight the reality of what is happening in North Korea. This point will be driven home as Pence will be accompanied by Fred Warmbier, the father of Otto Warmbier, the US student who died last year shortly after being released from North Korean captivity. He's also said to be arranging a meeting with North Korean defectors during his two-day visit. Whether this will deter any interaction with the North Korean Olympic delegation is unclear. With the two country positions still so far apart, serious sit-down talks are highly unlikely. But with such high-level officials attending, it does offer a rare opportunity for some communication, if only in passing.
There is a possibility that South Korean President Moon Jae-in will act as a third party and facilitate indirect communication between Vice President Pence and North Korea's ceremonial head of state Kim Yong-nam, allowing them at least a basic exchange of views.
권장호, Arirang News.
First daughter Ivanka Trump could attend the closing ceremony of the Global Games. If that happens, some experts believe the gesture would reflect the U.S. president's stance on the two Koreas. Kim Mo-yeon brings us one analysis.
CNN cited White House officials on Tuesday who reported that Ivanka Trump will be leading the U.S. presidential delegation at the closing ceremony of the upcoming Winter Olympics in South Korea. The report said Ivanka was asked to attend the closing ceremony by her father and the U.S. Olympic Committee. It also said that President Trump himself will attend some of the events to represent his country and that additional members of the delegation will be announced soon. Following the news, the Presidential Office of Korea said that Ivanka's visit is yet to be confirmed. An official from Cheongwade said that Seoul had not received any official announcement from the U.S. yet and that the two sides are holding close discussions on the matter. A diplomatic expert says that if confirmed, Trump's decision to send his daughter would be a show of support by his administration for the South Korean government.
The news of Ivanka Trump attending the closing ceremony of the Olympics is a signal that the United States government is showing solidarity with the South Korean government in making the Olympics a successful turning point in terms of bringing peace and stability to the peninsula.
The expert said that at the same time, this also reflects President Trump's intention to limit speculation about the possibility of using the Olympics to hold talks with North Korea on denuclearization.
If no United States government was serious about using the PyeongChang Olympics as an opportunity to establish channels of dialogue with North Korea, I think U.S. government would have sent somebody who's more specialized in the field of diplomacy or foreign policy.
Kim Mo-yeon, Arirang News.
At the National Assembly, top government officials were grilled on matters related to the economy. In the process, rival lawmakers clashed over a number of policies implemented by the Moon administration. Kim Min-ji has a wrap-up of day 2 of the interpellation sessions.
Rival parties dug in on their differences over the Moon Jaein administration's economic policies. Under scrutiny was the 16.4 minimum wage hike that took effect this year. The ruling Democratic Party of Korea and the government used the podium to defend their record on the matter, saying there have been double-digit increases in the past that didn't cause a huge shock to the economy but rather bore fruit in the long term.
Do you believe the economy will suffer or take the wage hike in stride?
Well, we believe the economy will be okay. In fact, things are actually better than when we raised wages in the past because this time we have introduced a support fund to help employers. So when down the road, that will help improve the situation.
However, the opposition party said that the government isn't listening to the voices of the public. They claim it's actually leading to job losses because micro-businesses can no longer afford to pay as many people.
Janitors, those who work in convenience stores, cafes, these are some of the people who are in an extremely difficult situation because they can easily be let go.
We have introduced a support fund to help micro-businesses so that these people won't be hurt by any fallout. We will introduce complementary measures to minimize the downsides.
Another area of dispute was regulations on virtual currency. The opposition said the government's failure to coordinate between ministries has led to wild price fluctuations, but it still hasn't drawn up substantive measures to deal with the crisis.
Until when do you plan to look into the situation, and when will appropriate measures be drawn up?
We don't have immediate plans, but we are going to root out any illegal transactions and calm any speculations while fostering blockchain technology. We will be closely monitoring the market to ensure a soft landing.
Opposition lawmakers also criticized a series of government measures aimed at cooling the property market, saying prices are still surging in certain areas, while the ruling party said prices overall are showing signs of stabilizing and that additional measures will be implemented soon. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Another victim of sexual harassment at workplace breaks her silence. Yet again, it involves members of the prosecution office, making this the second such account coming from an organization that's home to the so-called elite in the nation. The government is taking strong action to prevent such horrific encounters. Park Hee-jun gets us up to speed with the developments.
Following the testimony of prosecutor Seo Ji-hyun, who was a victim of sexual assault within the prosecution office, more victims are coming forward, further kindling the worldwide Me Too movement in Korea. Lee Moon-jung, a prosecutor at the Seoul Northern Prosecutor's Office, also came forward and shared her traumatic experience. She said she was a victim of sexual assault twice in 2003 and in 2005 by her superiors. Upon reporting the assaults, she was verbally abused and her career suffered a great deal. The stories of Seo and Im were not the first, nor will they be the last cases of harassment and assault that women suffer in private firms, the film industry, and even public offices on a daily basis. Women have spoken before, many times for that matter, and seems like for once, the voice of victims have been heard and received the necessary spotlight to prompt the government to take strong action. During a meeting with his top officials on Monday, President Moon Jaein said the cases of sexual misconduct were not handled appropriately and asked officials to make their utmost efforts to prevent such behavior from taking place at the workplace again.
아울러 정부는 직장 내 성희롱, 성폭력 근절에 대해 이번 기회에 끝을 본다는 비상한 각오로 임해주기 바랍니다.
Following the president's remark, Prime Minister Lee Na-kyun on Tuesday called for a thorough probe into all the allegations, calling the harassment cases at the prosecution office the agency's worst crisis.
I believe this is the prosecution's worst ever crisis. I ask the prosecution staking its honor, no, even its existence, to find out the truth about these accusations and take appropriate action.
He also ordered the Gender Equality Ministry and other relevant government offices to spare no effort to prevent victims or whistleblowers from being retaliated against, and to investigate all cases of sexual misconduct at government and public organizations. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now, the Korea International Trade Association released a report on Seoul's export competitiveness. When it comes to the number of outbound shipment items the nation displayed global dominance in, Korea sits at the 13th spot. Kim Hye-sung has the details.
Korea is leading the global export market in 71 different items as of 2016, adding 3 more items from the year before. That's according to the Korea International Trade Association, which said, in fact, that Korea ranked 13th in the world in terms of the number of exports in which it's the market leader. 2016 was also the first time since 2010 that Korea topped the market in more than 70 items. More than half of those were in chemicals and steel. New at the top of the list were naval ships and welding machines. It's encouraging news for Korea with half of its GDP coming from exports, but in many of the items, Korea was competing with its main trading partners. In 16 products, Korea had a market share less than 5 percentage points bigger than its closest competitors, with fierce competition coming from the U.S. in chemical products and from Japan and Germany in steel products. China topping the market with close to 1,700 items, ranked number 1, a position it's held since 2005. Also in the top 6 were Germany, the U.S., Italy, Japan, and India, each with more than 150 items. The reports noted that Korea's competitors are closing the gap in terms of its main exports, so it emphasized the need for Korea to come up with more high value-added goods and pursue a strategy of differentiation. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
South Korea's main stock index retreated sharply following Monday's massive losses on Wall Street. The Dow's biggest daily points drop in history came amid fears of inflation and rapid U.S. rate hikes as the new Fed chair took the reins from Janet Yellen. Kim Ji-yeon looks beyond the digits.
Korea's benchmark Kospi closed at the 2,453 level on Tuesday, down by 1.5% from the previous session, mainly due to historic losses on Wall Street. The losses took the lead from U.S. markets, which tumbled on concerns that both inflation and interest rates would rise faster than expected after Jerome Powell took over as chairman of the U.S. Federal Reserve, replacing Janet Yellen. The Dow Jones Industrial Average recorded its worst one-day points drop in history, falling 4.6% from its previous session to 24,345 on Monday. The S&P 500 dropped more than 4%, its largest percentage drop since 2011, and the Nasdaq shed about 4% as well. Luckily, a local expert says the Kospi will rebound during the first half once the shock from U.S. markets ebbs.
The fundamentals of the Korean economy are generally good, and the prices of raw materials are stable. Based on expectations that IT-related stocks will improve, we believe the Kospi will recover and surpass the 2,700 level during the first half of this year.
The Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol said he will continue to closely monitor the market volatility. A report released by the BOK's New York branch suggests it's highly likely the Federal Reserve will raise rates 4 times this year. If the Fed raises rates next month, it would surpass that of the BOK's, which has maintained rates at the 1.5% level, on par with the U.S. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The Korean government announced new measures to rid the nation's roads of vehicles that contribute to air pollution. The Ministry of Environment plans to invest some $146 million this year into scrapping old diesel vehicles or fitting them with diesel particulate filters. The ministry designated more than a dozen cities in Gyeonggi-do Province, including Suwon, Goyang, and even Gimpo and Incheon, as low-emission zones, where the operation of old diesel vehicles will be limited. Until now, that move was implemented only on the nation's capital. The new measures are part of efforts to eliminate over 1,300 tons of fine dust a year. The unfamiliar scene of planes grounded in Jeju due to recent wintry weather conditions is still fresh in the minds of residents and visitors to the usually sunny tourist destination. Once more, flight delays and rescheduling was inevitable in its airports as operation on the runway had to be stopped to remove snow. Here's Lee Jung-yeon with the impact of Snowmageddon in the southernmost island.
Jeju Airport had to once again halt operations due to severe weather conditions. On Tuesday at 12:15 p.m., a part of the runway path at Jeju Airport had to be sealed off. In what initially was meant to be a 30-minute task, the snow removal took almost 3 hours to complete. As of 3 p.m., 165 flights were either canceled, delayed, or turned back around, and almost 10,000 travelers are estimated to have been stranded on the island. Wind shear and strong wind warnings are still in effect at Jeju Airport. The unexpected halt in operations comes on the heels of more than 200 flights canceled or delayed on Sunday due to harsh weather conditions. According to the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, Jeju Airport operates with one central runway that handles all traffic, which implies closing it at times to remove accumulated snow in the winter. Heavy snowfall has been hitting Jeju Island for 4 consecutive days now. Just on Tuesday morning, Mount Halla received around 99 centimeters of snow, while the rest of the island is expected to receive up to 30 centimeters throughout the day. Lee Jung-yeon, Arirang News.
Time to turn to Michelle Park at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, gusts from Siberia are keeping the air extremely cold and dry, I heard.
Yes, that's right, Daniel. The cold wave persists in Korea with very cold wind chills even during the day, reaching below -10 degrees Celsius. Starting tomorrow, we'll be able to see some mercury on the rise, and by Thursday, the country will get some relief from this cold spell finally. It's been snowing on Jeju Island almost 1 meter so far, but that won't be all. Now, the southwestern coast and Jeju Island are expected to get more snow until tomorrow morning. It'll be blistering cold tomorrow, and no surprise there, Seoul will start off the morning with -12 degrees Celsius. Daegu and Busan begins at -10 and -9 degrees. Into the afternoon, Seoul remains freezing cold at -3. Gwangju rises to 2, Busan at 3 degrees. Looking at the weather in PyeongChang, the morning low will get down to almost -20 degrees Celsius. Now, on the day of the opening ceremony, the mercury is expected to be warmer, but frigid winds are expected to make the cold even more intense. That's your weather. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
These are the stories we could squeeze into tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. As always, thank you for watching.